All right, let's jump into a deep dive on cloud cost optimization. You've sent over a really interesting collection of AWS and Azure playbooks and guides. So
Yeah.
we're going to unpack those and hopefully find some nuggets of wisdom for you.
Awesome.
We're talking about strategies that you can actually use to, bring down those cloud costs, maybe even find some opportunities that you haven't even thought about.
Yeah, what I think is so cool about this topic is that cloud costs, they really impact everybody, right? You've got the devs who are building the apps, the finance team that's keeping track of all the money, even the execs making those high-level decisions.
Right.
So no matter where you sit, in the company, this deep dive is going to have something for you to help you really squeeze as much value out of those cloud resources.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it this way. Every dollar that you waste on, cloud spend that you don't need, that's a dollar that could have been, put towards a cool new feature or a marketing campaign or even, just a team pizza party.
Right, exactly. Got to keep the team happy. Right.
For sure. And the cool thing is, you gave us a mix of AWS and Azure stuff. So it doesn't matter which platform you're on. A lot of these concepts, they go across both.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, so let's jump into the AWS side of things first.
Sounds good.
And we'll start with the playbook on removing unused RDS instances.
Oh.
Okay. Now, RDS, Amazon's relational database service. But what's interesting is how easy it is to end up with these unused instances just kind of hanging out in your account.
Right.
You've got boxes in the attic. They're there. You haven't gotten around to cleaning them out.
Yeah, it's easy to just forget about those things.
Yeah, and so this playbook actually gives you a step-by-step method for finding those unused instances, like being a detective, looking for clues.
Right.
And one of the key things is the number of database connections.
Yeah.
So if you see an instance that has 0 connections for a week,
right,
that's a pretty good sign that it's not being used.
Absolutely. That's a big red flag.
So then, do we just hit the delete button?
Well, hold on a sec. Before you do anything rash, this playbook really recommends that you create a final snapshot of that instance.
Okay.
Think of it like taking a picture of that box in your attic before you toss it out, just in case you realize later, oh, I needed something in there. Gives you that peace of mind.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
And what's cool is that the playbook, it even gives you some sample scripts
right,
to help you automate that analysis process.
Yep.
So you don't have to, do everything by hand.
Yeah, automation is key.
For sure. But even after you delete an instance, remember, it can take a day or two for those billing changes to actually show up in your account. So
right,
be patient.
Patience is a virtue.
It is, yeah. Keep monitoring those costs. Make sure you're reaping the benefits.
Absolutely. And speaking of monitoring, the next playbook is all about optimizing DynamoDB.
Oh, yeah.
Which is Amazon's super fast, key value, NoSQL database. Mm-hmm. Perfect for those high performance apps. And guess what? CloudWatch metrics, that's your secret weapon here.
Now, CloudWatch, that's AWS's monitoring and observability service.
Right.
But what's cool is how these metrics, they can directly point you to cost-saving opportunities.
For sure.
It's not just about looking at graphs and charts, but actually understanding what those numbers mean.
Exactly. So think about it. You're looking at the consumed read capacity units metric for your DynamoDB table.
Oh.
Now, this is telling you how much read capacity you're actually using.
Right.
So if you see that you're consistently using less than what you've provisioned, you can actually adjust those capacity units down.
Oh.
And bam, instant savings.
It's like right-sizing your engine. You don't need a V8 if you're just driving around town.
Exactly. You got it.
Yeah.
And just like with RDS, those billing changes for DynamoDB, they might not show up right away.
Right.
So keep an eye on things. Make sure your optimization is actually working.
Okay, so we've tackled databases now. Let's move on to everyone's favorite storage service, S3.
Oh, yeah, S3. Gotta love S3.
It's like the giant walk-in closet of the cloud world.
Right, you can put anything in there.
Anything and everything, just keep piling it in.
But even with something as simple as S3, there's a surprising amount you can do to optimize those costs.
Right.
This playbook takes you on a deep dive through your S3 buckets, starting with the most basic question. Do you really need all this data?
That's a great question. I mean, it's easy to just keep accumulating data forever.
Yeah, it just keeps piling up.
But sometimes it's worth taking a step back and going, wait a minute, do we really need to keep all this?
It's like cleaning out that walk-in closet we were talking about.
Right.
You might be surprised at how much stuff you can get rid of and not even miss it.
Yeah, I know I've got some stuff I should probably get rid of.
And once you've decluttered a bit, you can start thinking about how you're organizing what's left.
Right. This is where those S3 storage classes come in, right?
Yeah.
You've got different tiers for different access patterns. It's
Exactly.
like choosing between a filing cabinet for your important documents versus like a storage box in the basement for the things you rarely need.
Yeah. Perfect analogy. And the playbook walks you through analyzing those data access patterns so you can figure out which storage class makes the most sense for each object.
Right.
It's all about finding that balance between easy access and keeping costs down.
And don't forget lifecycle policies. They're like setting rules for your S3 buckets.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
So you can automatically move data between those different storage classes based on, how old it is, how often you're accessing it.
It's like having a self-organizing closet that puts everything away for you.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about security. Just as important as saving money is keeping that data safe.
Right.
So this playbook really emphasizes the importance of setting those global policies for encryption and default private access.
Makes sense.
It's not just about saving money, it's about protecting your valuable data and making sure you're compliant with all those regulations.
Okay, so we've tackled databases, we've tackled storage. Let's talk about EC2, the workhorse of AWS compute services.
EC2, the engine that keeps everything running.
Think of it like the engine of your cloud application and just like any engine you want to make sure it's running efficiently.
Absolutely. You don't want to be wasting fuel.
And these playbooks offer two really powerful strategies for optimizing EC2 costs: scheduling and auto-scaling.
Okay, yeah.
So let's start with scheduling. Imagine you've got a development environment that's only being used during business hours.
Right.
Why keep those EC2 instances running 24/7 when they're just sitting idle most of the time?
It's like leaving your car running all night when you're not using it. Total waste of gas.
Exactly. It's just burning money and not getting you anywhere.
With EC2 scheduling, you can set up those automatic start and stop times for your instances so they're only running when you need them.
Right.
And the playbook gives you a great starting point.
Okay.
Focus on those environments where you think those instances are probably just idling outside of those peak usage times.
Yeah, start with the low-hanging fruit.
Exactly. And they even give you some really helpful sample questions to guide your conversations with the different stakeholders.
Oh.
Things like, what type of environment are you using? Is it dev, testing, pre-production, production, or when does the application really need to be running?
Those are great questions to kind of get to the heart of it,
Absolutely. Helps you make those informed decisions about scheduling.
And the other EC2 optimization strategy that we got here is auto-scaling, which is where things get really dynamic.
Oh, yeah. Auto-scale.
Instead of relying on those fixed schedules, auto-scaling lets you automatically adjust the number of EC2 instances you're running based on real-time demand.
So it's like a self-adjusting thermostat for your cloud applications.
Exactly. When things heat up and demand increases, auto-scaling spins up more instances to handle the load.
And when things cool down, it steals back down to save you money.
Love it. And this playbook, it really stresses that auto-scaling, it's not just a technical task, it's a team effort.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got to involve people from across the organization, FinOps analysts, cloud architects, DevOps engineers, IT managers.
Absolutely. It's not just about clicking buttons in the AWS console.
No.
You really have to understand that application, its usage patterns, and what the business needs are.
So the playbook recommends starting with a thorough assessment using AWS Cost Explorer.
Yeah.
You want to analyze that historical cost data. See how your application's resource utilization has been fluctuating over time.
And picking the right time range for your analysis, that's key.
Right.
Are you looking at short-term trends, long-term patterns?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And once you've analyzed the data, you can start making those decisions about which EC2 instance types to use for your auto-scaling groups.
Right. And don't forget about those other cost optimization strategies we talked about, like reserved instances and spot instances.
It's like putting a puzzle together, right? Where each piece is a different cost optimization technique.
You got it. Find the right combination to get that perfect solution for your needs.
And of course, once you set up auto-scaling, you've got to keep monitoring to make sure everything's working as planned and to see if there are any other opportunities to tweak things.
Monitoring is key.
Always monitoring.
Always.
So we've covered a lot of ground with AWS, from databases and storage to those compute services.
Yeah, we've been busy.
But don't worry, we haven't forgotten about Azure. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore some key strategies for optimizing Azure costs, and you'll start to see how many of these same principles apply across both platforms.
Sounds good. I'm ready for more.
Stay tuned.
I will.
Welcome back to our cloud cost optimization adventure. Last time we were digging into AWS, found some cool ways to save money there.
Yeah, AWS has got a lot of options.
They do, they do.
Mm.
But now let's shift gears a little bit and see what Azure's got up its sleeve. You'll notice that a lot of the same ideas apply, but Azure definitely has its own unique flavor when it comes to keeping those costs down.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And just like with AWS, the key to optimizing those Azure costs is picking the right services, configuring them efficiently, and really keeping a close eye on your usage.
Right.
And the good news is Azure's got some really great tools to help you out along the way.
That's good to hear. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's zoom out for a second and talk big picture, right, though?
Yeah.
What are some of the high-level things you should be thinking about when it comes to Azure cost optimization?
Yeah, so one of the most important concepts is right-sizing your resources.
Okay.
That basically means making sure that you're using the most cost-effective virtual machine size, storage tier, service plan, all that good stuff for your specific workloads.
Right.
It's like picking the right size shoe. You don't want something too big. You don't want something too small. You want the perfect fit.
That makes perfect sense. But with so many options, how do you even know what the right size is?
Well, Azure has some pretty handy tools for that. So one of them is Azure Advisor.
Okay.
It actually analyzes your resource usage and gives you personalized recommendations for right sizing.
So it's like having a personal shopper for your cloud resources.
Exactly. Helps you find those deals, helps you avoid overspending.
Love that. And what about Azure Cost Management? I've heard that mentioned a few times.
Oh, yeah. Cost management is your hub for understanding all your Azure spending.
Okay.
It gives you those deep insights into your cost trends, helps you identify those areas where you can optimize, and even lets you create budgets and set alerts
Oh, nice.
to keep your spending under control.
So it's like having a financial advisor for your cloud environment.
Yeah, pretty much. Keeps you on track, helps you make those smart choices.
Love it. Now, we talked about those Azure Blob storage tiers earlier.
Right. The hot, cool, cold, and archive.
But Azure, they've got a whole smorgasbord of storage options, each with their own pricing model.
They do, yeah. So many choices.
So how do you know which one to pick?
Well, picking the right storage type is really critical for optimizing those audio costs. Imagine you've got a bunch of old photos and videos, stuff that you rarely access, but you still want to keep them safe.
Right.
You wouldn't store those precious memories on your super expensive high-performance SSD drive, would you?
Definitely not. I'd probably put them on an external hard drive or something.
Or even in the cloud.
Yeah, in the cloud, using like a low-cost storage tier.
Exactly. And it's the same idea with Azure storage.
Okay.
For those frequently accessed things, you'll want something like Azure Premium SSDs. But for less frequent stuff, you can save some money by using something like Azure Blob Storage or even Archive Storage.
So it's all about finding that right balance between performance and cost, just like with your personal files.
Right, exactly. And luckily, Azure gives you the tools and the features to analyze those data access patterns. So you can make informed decisions about which storage type makes the most sense for your specific needs.
All right, so we've got right sizing, reserved instances, savings plans, storage optimization. What else have you got up your sleeve for Azure?
Well, Azure has some pretty nifty features that can really help save some cash.
Okay, like what?
Well, you can actually configure your virtual machines to automatically shut down when they're not being used.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like setting a timer for your lights to go off at night. No need to waste that energy.
No zombie VMs just racking up charges.
Exactly. Get rid of those zombies. And then there's serverless computing, which can be a game changer.
Yeah, serverless.
With Azure Functions, you're only paying for those compute resources when you're actually using them.
That's nice.
No need to provision servers, manage servers, which can really cut those costs down, especially if your workload is kind of unpredictable.
Makes sense. So it's kind of like paying for a taxi ride instead of owning a car, right? If you only need it once in a while.
Exactly. Perfect analogy.
All right, so we've talked a lot about AWS and Azure-specific stuff. But now let's zoom back out again and talk about those cross-platform strategies.
Okay, yeah.
The things that work no matter which cloud provider you're using.
Yeah, those universal truths.
So what are some of those key principles?
Well, one of the most important is having a really solid tagging strategy for your resources.
Tags?
Think of tags like labels that you put on your resources. They give you extra information. Things like the purpose, the owner, the environment, all that good stuff.
It seems like a small thing, but it can really make a big difference.
It can, yeah. It's like organizing your files with folders and labels.
Right. Makes it easier to find what you need.
Exactly. And with good tagging, you can break down that cloud spending by department, by project, by application, whatever makes sense for your business.
So it's kind of like having an itemized receipt for your cloud bill.
Yeah, exactly. You see exactly where the money's going.
And another important strategy is automation.
Automation. Gotta love it.
Both AWS and Azure give you a ton of tools for automating all kinds of tasks.
They do, yeah. Everything from provisioning those resources to actually putting those cost optimization policies in place.
We saw that with lifecycle management policies, auto-scaling. What other areas can we automate?
Oh, tons of stuff, right. You can automate things like right-sizing recommendations, shutting down those unused resources, generating those cost reports.
Makes sense.
Find those tasks that you're doing manually over and over again and see if you can automate them. It's like having a robot do your chores for you.
Love it. And speaking of robots, what about machine learning? Could we use AI to help us out here?
Absolutely. AWS and Azure both have machine learning services that can help you predict your future cloud usage,
Oh, wow.
identify those weird spending patterns, and even automate those cost optimization decisions.
So it's like a crystal ball for your cloud costs?
Yeah, pretty much. Helps you avoid those big surprises.
Now, let's talk about something that I think is really important but often overlooked, and that's collaboration.
Yeah, collaboration is key.
Because cost optimization, it's not just an IT issue, it's a business issue.
It really is. To do this right, you need to break down those silos between different teams and really cultivate that culture of shared responsibility.
Right, everyone's got to be on board.
Everyone's got to be on board. It's not enough for just the IT team to care about saving money.
Right.
Everyone needs to work together toward that same goal.
And that means clear communication, regular meetings, dashboards, reports.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone needs to be on the same page and understand what progress you're making.
All right, so let's look at a specific example from your materials that really highlights this idea of both technical expertise and collaboration.
Okay, yeah.
And it's that EC2 and RDS instance scheduling on AWS.
Ah, instant scheduling.
So this playbook walks you through identifying instances that can be automatically started and stopped based on a schedule.
Yeah.
Great way to save money, but it takes careful planning and coordination.
It does.
And they really emphasize that you need to understand your application's usage patterns.
Right.
Work with the developers, work with the application owners to figure out when those instances can be safely shut down.
It's a team effort.
And they even give you those sample questions again. Things like, what type of environment is this? Dev, testing, pre-prod, production. Or when does the application really need to be up and running?
Yeah, those are great starting points for those conversations.
Absolutely. And here's another really important point from that playbook. When you're explaining those scheduling recommendations, you've got to be able to talk to both the techies and the non-techies.
Right, you've got to be able to speak both languages.
You might be talking to an engineer one minute and then a business executive the next.
Yeah, you got to be able to tailor your message.
It's like being a translator, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Bridging that gap between the tech world and the business world.
And as your FinOps practice gets more mature, you can start to use more advanced techniques.
Okay, like what?
Well, things like using CloudWatch alarms to automate those instant schedules based on specific performance metrics.
So instead of just relying on those fixed schedules, you're letting the system kind of figure it out based on real-time usage.
Exactly, that's the idea.
But even with automation, it's important to remember that cost optimization, it's not a one-time thing, right?
Right,
It's an ongoing journey. Got to constantly be monitoring, looking for new opportunities, adapting as things change.
The cloud is always evolving, so you got to evolve with it.
Always changing, always got to stay one step ahead.
That's the fun part.
So in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some of the challenges and those pitfalls of cloud cost optimization.
Okay.
And we'll leave you with some thought-provoking questions to kind of ponder as you go on your own cloud cost optimization adventure.
I like it. Sounds good.
Stay tuned. All right, welcome back for the final part of our cloud cost optimization deep dive. We've journeyed through AWS, explored Azure, and uncovered some universal truths about keeping those cloud bills in check.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride.
It has been, but just like with any adventure, there are some traps you got to watch out for.
Definitely. So let's talk about some of those common pitfalls that people tend to stumble into.
Right.
One of the classic ones is neglecting to properly tag resources.
Oh, yeah.
Right from the get-go.
It's easy to think, oh, we'll do that later.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
When you're just trying to get the project out the door. But then, as more projects pile up, teams change, Suddenly you're looking at this mountain of untagged resources.
And then it becomes a nightmare trying to actually analyze your spending, figure out who's using what.
Yeah, like, where did all this money go?
Exactly, like trying to do your taxes without any receipts, total chaos.
Another trap is the set it and forget it mentality.
Yeah, that's a big one.
We talked about automation.
Right.
Which is great.
But even the best systems, they need a little TLC every now and then.
Exactly. Workloads change, new services come out.
Mm-hmm.
What was optimal a year ago might be eating your budget today.
Yeah, you got to stay on top of things.
So you got to be proactive, keep monitoring that cloud environment.
Absolutely. Continuous monitoring is key.
Think of it like tending a garden. Can't just plant the seeds and walk away. Got to water, got to weed, got to prune.
You got to nurture it.
Got to keep it healthy.
Exactly.
Now, here's a trickier pitfall. Getting so focused on the technical stuff that you forget about the human element.
Ah, yes, the human factor.
We touched on this with collaboration. But it's so important. It's worth saying again, cost optimization. It's not just about tweaking settings and clicking buttons. It's about changing mindsets.
It's a cultural shift.
Yeah. Got to get everyone thinking about costs.
Absolutely. If teams think FinOps is someone else's problem or just a bunch of rules they got to follow,
right,
you're going to have a hard time making real progress.
Yeah, you need buy-in from everybody.
Everyone needs to feel a sense of ownership over those cloud costs.
It's like trying to lose weight just by focusing on the number on the scale, but not changing your diet or your exercise habits.
Right. You need a holistic approach.
Got to look at the whole picture.
Exactly.
Now let's look at a specific example from your materials that really shows this interplay between the tech and the human side of things.
Okay.
And that's the AWS playbook on S3 cost optimization.
S3.
It starts with a really simple question. Do we really need all this data?
It seems simple, but it can be a tough one to answer.
It is. It's not just about getting rid of the obvious junk. It's about having those conversations with stakeholders about, data retention policies, compliance, even just that sentimental attachment to old data sets.
Yeah, people get attached to their data.
They do. So you got to navigate all those complex organizational dynamics, challenge those assumptions that people have been holding on to for who knows how long.
It can be tricky.
It can be, but the payoff can be huge.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about some of the pitfalls, looked at some real-world examples. As we wrap up this deep dive, what are some broader questions for our listeners to think about as they go on their own cloud cost optimization journey?
All right, here's one. How can you actually measure the return on investment of your FinOps efforts?
Ooh, ROI. Good one.
Yeah, it's not always just about the dollars and cents saved. Sometimes it's about freeing up those resources so you can invest in new things.
Right.
Be more innovative.
Yeah, get that competitive edge.
Absolutely. So saving money is great, but it's not the only goal.
You want to make sure those cost optimization efforts actually support the big picture goals of the organization.
They should be aligned with your overall strategy.
Makes sense.
Which leads to another question. How do you connect those cost optimization strategies with your organization's big picture goals? FinOps, it can't happen in a silo.
Right. It's got to be part of the bigger picture.
It's got to be integrated with the company's priorities and initiatives.
So everyone understands how optimizing cloud costs can help the business succeed.
Everyone wins.
Exactly.
And finally, here's a thought-provoking question to leave you with. What if cloud cost optimization wasn't just about doing more with less, but about doing different with less? What if it sparked a fundamental change in how we design, how we build, how we operate in the cloud?
Whoa, now we're talking. Instead of just trimming the edges, we're like reshaping the whole cloud landscape.
That's the power of FinOps.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, remember, cost optimization. It's not just a technical challenge. It's a chance to really transform how your organization works with the cloud. It's about efficiency. It's about innovation. It's about driving business value.
It's about making the cloud work for you.
We've given you the knowledge, the insights, hopefully even a few laughs along the way.
Hopefully.
Now it's your turn to take this and run with it on your own cloud journey. Until next time, happy optimizing.
Happy optimizing, everyone.